So yeah, I'm Tom Eggleston. I'm Managing Director of ProofID. We're an identity management company in Manchester in the UK. And I want to talk to you today about some work we've been doing with our customers in the UK academic university sector around social login. What I want to do is give some information about the business context and the business problems we're trying to solve with social login, and then talk a little bit about the technologies that we put together to deliver this. To start with, though, I'm going to do a really quick history of universities in the UK over the last few years, because it's important to set the context. So here we go. In the 70s, universities, well, we had bad haircuts. That's actually two of our recent prime ministers, would you believe? Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Yeah. But at the time, there was no tuition fees. It was all free, about 1.3 million students. That was great. Fast forward to the 80s, there we go. The haircut's still pretty bad. You know, this was a great time to be a student. In the summer when you weren't studying, you could sign on and get unemployment benefit. These were golden days. Again, it was all free, government paid for everything, student numbers up slightly. In the 90s, okay, so the hair's pretty bad. That definitely is not me. Whatever you may think, that's not me. But things started to change pretty rapidly at this point. So the government at the time decided, you know, university participation really had to increase. So the numbers of students really went up and the number of institutions went up as well. And people started having to pay for things. So it was just for maintenance at that point. So we fast forward now to, to now really. Okay, so the haircuts are a bit better, but the world has completely changed. So we've now got 2.5 million students at any one time, loads more institutions competing for those students. But students are now paying £9,000 a year to go to university. So you know, they're paying between £30,000 and £50,000 to get a degree now. So it's kind of a different dynamic. And at the same time, there's been a big fall off in government funding as well in terms of grants and so on. So the world has changed pretty dramatically. Where does this leave universities now? So, you know, it's a difficult environment for them. There's a big funding squeeze, but at the same time, they've gone from being a situation where, you know, they were in control, if you like. They were the universities, and they could pick and choose who would come to them, and they would give the privilege of studying at their university. It's been flipped on their heads, really. The students are now their customers, you know, and they have to offer a service to those students, and it's highly competitive. We've got a large number of institutions all trying to get these students in and get those revenues. You know, the £9,000 a year, that's for most universities in the UK, that represents most of their funding. So it's really critical that they get those students through the door. What that means is, you know, the student experience and how they deliver services to students is absolutely fundamental, and that's everything from the quality of halls of residence right through to how they actually deliver their IT services to students and deliver a really first-class experience to students. And that's really where we've seen some use cases developing around social login. So how does this help with the problems I've just outlined for the universities? Well, there's three key sort of areas where social login really can make a difference. Firstly, in recruitment. So it's a way of actually getting people who might be interested in studying at the university, who might be interested in paying that £9,000 a year, so school-age people wanting to find out about the university. So social login is a great way of making that easier. Secondly, there's retention. You need to keep the students there to keep that funding. If they don't stay for 3 months in the first year, the university has to give all the money back, so that's a problem. So again, there's this angle about how you actually deliver the services to the students while they're at the university, and try and make that a really slick experience. And then alumni as well. The way that a lot of universities do alumni at the moment is pretty ineffective. Again, social login and maintaining those relationships through social identities is a really important way of improving that. So I'm just going to dive into these in a little bit more detail for you. Oh, right. Oh, hang on. What have I done? My animations aren't working. So the point I wanted to make here, but one of them's missing, sadly, is actually this isn't too different to what retail organizations are doing with social login, really. This is really about, you know, new business, customer engagement, and repeat business. So it's the same kind of themes, just finding it in an unexpected area, really, in a sort of not-for-profit sector. Okay, I'm going to look a bit more about recruitment. So This is how universities in the UK do recruitment now in terms of someone coming to find information and register for a prospectus. I'm picking here on the University of Dundee. They're friends of ours, but I love this form. This is, if there was a prize for the worst ever designed web form, this might be it. So this is what they expect someone to do to go and get a prospectus. First, you have to say what your title is. So we've got Mr., Miss, Mrs., that's fine. But you could also, if you want, you can be the Reverend or the Very Reverend, or you can be a Professor or Professor Sir. This is great. So we love that. Secondly, okay, this is, you have to put in your country. This is a mandatory field, right? Remember that Dundee is in Scotland in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom does not appear in this list. Neither does Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. This is good stuff. We love this. And then finally, this field, I don't quite know what this is. You have to select something from this, but in this one drop-down box, we've got Argentina, which is a country, we've got Cardiff, which is a city, and we've got Monmouthshire, which is a county. So, you know, good luck with this. Maybe what they do is if you get through this form, you just get your degree. I don't know. Maybe that's how it should work. But this is a bit of a hangover from, you know, how it used to be when actually the students would come to the university. You know, the university was in control of this. It's not good enough now, really. You know, if you're expecting someone to give you the £9,000 to come and study there, you've got to make this easy, easy for them to go through this process. So the first use case here is, you know, school pupil may be interested in the university. Let's not give them that form. Let's say to them, okay, you can log in with Facebook. Let's make it easy. When we do that, we can capture some attributes about the user and we can put them into a CRM system. It doesn't have to be Dynamics. You know, there's plenty of other CRM systems, but the point is we've got some information about that user and we can use that for marketing activities as we try and funnel this user towards becoming a true applicant. At the same time, we can use some federation technologies and maybe give them single sign-on into some taster materials. Maybe there's a taster course in the virtual learning environment, maybe some videos in the portal. We can give them access to that. And if we can see that they start to engage with those materials, that's the time that we hit them with a form. We don't hit them with a form the first time because a lot of people just aren't going to fill it in. So that's the first use case. Secondly, looking at the student experience. So when we thought about this, our hypothesis were, you know, the new cohort of students coming in, frighteningly, can't remember a time before the internet existed. So they're kind of born in the cloud. So our hypothesis was they would like to be able to access their learning materials when they're at university using social login. So we did a bit of research with our good friends at the University of Dundee. This is what we found. So 59% of students would like to use social login to access university websites and services, of which 95% they'd be comfortable doing that with Facebook, 46% with Twitter, and then Instagram. There were more, but I'm just taking the top ones. And the reason for this was they're interested in having fewer passwords to enter, don't like forms, and just the general familiarity of the experience was important as well. So it seems there is a potential demand for this. In terms of reasons against this, well, privacy is one, and I think it's really important if you do this to be very clear about what your policy is about what you're going to be using and what you're going to do with their data. And secondly, there's a security risk element around this, and you know, there are ways that we can address that, maybe with MFA and so on. So this is the use case we're looking at here. So a new student comes to the university. They can sign in with Facebook. Maybe it's the same Facebook account they had when they were a pre-applicant. What we can do now is go through some kind of a proofing process to raise the assurance level, prove that they really are in control of that account. And then once we've got a higher assurance level, the university may take the decision to say, well, fair enough, we're going to give single sign-on to all these resources using your external identity, which is a really nice experience for the users. What do I mean by social identity proofing? Well, this is just a way, really, of an automated way to tie a social identity to a known individual or to raise the assurance level of that identity. And there's different ways you can do that. We've worked with a kind of direct way of doing that. But there's other services you can use, like TrulyU and so on, which you can build into this kind of process. And once you've got that level of assurance, you can build the tools for a university to decide how much data and which systems you're going to expose with that kind of a login, and whether or not maybe you need to do a step up using something like Google Authenticator. Okay, so use case 3, this is about alumni engagement. So Typical universities at the UK will now receive about £1 million a year through alumni donations, but from 9 million contactable alumni, only 1.4% donated last year. And they're relying really on traditional marketing, and it's not really working. So the thought process here is if you can get students at a university to link together multiple social identities, then you've got a great channel for building a proper lifelong relationship with them, which hopefully is going to turn into donations and an extra revenue stream. So, you know, just a 20% increase in donators, that could be £200,000 a year to a typical university. So these kind of things can have a real impact. So really the use case here is just that we can link the additional social identities together and then manage that relationship through some kind of CRM system. Typically, probably going to be Facebook when you go through the pre-applicant process, use case 1. The one that the universities probably want by the time the student leaves is LinkedIn, because that's going to be the most valuable one from an alumni management point of view. Okay, so this is really about the fact that this technology is helping universities to really unlock the value of identities. And you know, this is new, really. I mean, I've been doing identity management with universities for 10 or 15 years, and for most of that, I was trying to persuade them to spend quite a lot of money on what's essentially plumbing. Whereas, you know, now these kind of technologies, it's a very different conversation. You know, we're talking about technologies, identity technologies that actually can start driving revenues, both sort of in the front door with the pre-applicants, but also at the back door, if you like, with the alumni side of things. So that's really, it's quite cool. Okay, just a couple of universities that are doing this. I'm not going to read all of this out, but we do have some universities now that we're working with who are actually taking this stuff into production now. So University of the Arts London and University of Hull. So, you know, it's developing, and hopefully these are going to go well. So that's the kind of the context. Just to look at how if you're going to build one of these, what are the components that you need to put together to make this work. So this is it at a high level. So we've got several key components there. We've got the federation service that's really bringing all the social connectors in. Also important to have another method for those people who don't have a social account or don't want to use it for this purpose, so some kind of LDAP connection. We've got the federation service, which a processing engine, which is actually going to do something with these identities. Potentially provisioning, if you need to actually go and create accounts in some of these systems. Just in time is maybe good enough for this kind of use case, but provisioning may be a requirement. And an API as well, so you can actually do the integration with the CRM and different systems. So just a little bit more detail on some of these. So the social connectors, of course, they ship with many of the federation products that are available now, so that we can do the OAuth flows that we need to actually do the social login. And we can request permission at that point for some of the identity attributes around users, which we can then pull through and do something with. And sometimes, you know, we can also request write permission, so maybe the ability to send messages or write on a user's Facebook wall, and that opens up some quite interesting possibilities in terms of different communication channel and potentially marketing activities as well. So we need a federation capability, so the ability to provide federated SSO into services, whether that's at the pre-applicant stage, whether that's taster modules, taster courses, or actually if we're doing the second use case, potentially providing single sign-on into all of the learning resources. Key to doing that really is around open standards and protocol support, because universities have every kind of technology under the sun, really. So in order to be able to do this, we need to support all of the standards. And potentially, you know, just touching on that security point, having some kind of multi-factor capability, such as, you know, maybe Google Authenticator or something like that, to be able to step up the authentication for certain systems or when it's required. We need some kind of, we call this the Consolidated Identity Store, but really this is a database where we can map all of the relationships together between the different identities and their social identities and their institutional identity as well, really building up this idea of the consolidated identity for an individual. There's some complexities involved in doing this, so if you're getting the same set of attributes from different external sources, you need to have some rules around attribute precedence, which one are you actually going to carry forward, and so on. Also, this is where you might want to determine different roles. So applicant, student, alumni, so you can really transition this through the whole user lifecycle and give access to different resources as you go through. And also the assurance levels. This is also potentially where you want to have the provisioning capability if that's required and if just-in-time isn't going to work for the use case. Some kind of landing page. This is where people can come in to launch applications. Gives you a user interface for doing the linking of the additional social identities together. Not always required. In our experience, many universities actually just want people to launch applications from their own portal, from existing portal, and that's possible as well. But this is something that's nice to have. And finally, an API on its own. You know, we can give social login. That's great, but actually to get real value out of this and real value out of the identities that we've got in the consolidated identity store, we need to be able to interact with other systems. So we need some kind of an API to allow the CRM system to interact and do useful things. So a minimal set really is to be able to read attributes and read user information from the data store, maybe manipulate roles so that if we can have some kind of decision made in the CRM system, we can take the user into a different role and they can have a different set of access to different applications, and potentially the ability to communicate with individuals through the social channel, but initiated from the CRM system. So the API is a really key element of this. So technology that's required to put this together. So you need a federation platform. On the open source side, we've done a lot of work with Simple SAML PHP. Once you get your head around it, it's a bit different to work with the first time. It's actually really capable application. Very good for working with programmatically, and it comes with all the social connectors that you'll need, and also support for several of the standards. On the commercial side, we also work with Ping Identity and Ping Federate. Other vendors are available, but Ping's a really nice tool. We like that. On the provisioning side, the provisioning requirements around this are quite lightweight, so we've worked with an open source provisioning engine called Midpoint. That does the job for us, but really any provisioning tool can fit in at this point. So yeah, you can put this all together using those kind of components. We do have our own solution called Identify. You can talk to me about it if you want to find out more about it, but just wanted to give you some insight into the components that make that up. So that's it. I rushed through that end bit a bit because someone was holding up numbers at me, but there we go. So questions? Yep, at the back. Is it?
I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the edge cases of where the social authentication was good enough, or what kind of services were good enough, versus what applications were on the edge that needed the step up.
Okay, well, it really depends with each university, really, you know, and we try and leave the decision down to them. One of the universities, for example, is allowing access into Office 365 for email and collaboration and so on, and that's okay. You know, maybe, to be honest, it's entirely down to the university and what their risk profile is. You know, maybe you would see postgraduates who are doing sort of research, which tends to be much more sensitive data, is going to be something that the universities are much more protective of, rather than maybe undergraduate information, which is probably not such a big deal. Anything obviously that involves finance, so maybe you know, to do with paying fees or paying for services, may well require a step up.
Okay, so you haven't seen like a general trend or anything?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
No.
I guess maybe more specifically online classwork, when they're logging into, you know, things like Blackboard or whatever kind of other content.
That hasn't really come up, to be honest, with the customers we've worked with. That hasn't seemed to be the issue, really, certainly at the undergraduate level, and that's really where we're kind of pitching this at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit more about your proofing engine?
Yeah, sure. So what we do currently, Firstly, it's modular, so there's the ability to put in different proofing methods on a modular basis. So that gives us the ability, if we want to go out and call biometric services like, there's several services online that you can use, or we could call out to Trulio or services like that. The actual service that we provide, essentially what we do, and I'm not massively technical in a sort of development sense, but as I understand it, we generate a token, and essentially we split that in two. Half goes off to the social network, and half is transmitted to the user either in person or via SMS or something like that. And then the student actually has to kind of go and join those two things together, and we give a workflow process to do that. And in doing that, we're really proving that they actually do have control of that account. What we do then is make sure that that's for a limited time period, and you can configure how long that's good for. So you might want to go and recertify every semester or every year or more frequently and go through that process again.
Other questions?
Quick one, yeah. Can you tell us if universities are open for cloud solutions or is it on-premise solution usually?
What, for accessing the applications? Or,
or for all the management?
At the moment, it's more of an on-prem appliance, but it could be either. And certainly it can be for accessing applications on cloud or on-prem. It doesn't really matter where those...
Yeah, but for the system, are they open to have cloud?
The system itself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hosted.
Hosted,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
Okay. Okay. The two of you are the last questions. We're going to run down out of time.
So you're talking about using Facebook for registration. Given the fact that being in security industry, I fake everything in Facebook. And in assurance level, what kind of challenges that you faced going back and forth, or what was the solution that you had given to students, or how did you rectify this issue?
Sorry, I just missed the first part of that, sorry.
Assurance of Facebook information taking into registration form.
Facebook?
The assurance from the Facebook information that you're taking into registration for universities.
Yeah.
So you're relying on the information, and what was the challenge that you faced in identifying the right information?
Okay, so is the question about the information in Facebook might not be accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this is all about making that first contact, taking the friction out of that first contact. So the first time you log in with Facebook, we'll pull through the information we can get, and that's good enough for that first step. What we do in our system is then we've got the ability, when there's engagement with the process, we can then throw up a form and say, next time you want to access this resource, actually, I need a bit more information from you at this point. And we can actually start to request either the additional information we need to actually start moving towards a full application, or actually validating the information that was pulled through from Facebook. And we can get that information because we know the user's shown a level of commitment at that point already. Does that help?
Okay. One last question up here.
I'm assuming there's an equivalent federation to InCommon in the UK. How do you interface with something like that with your social piece?
Yeah, there is. It's UK, the UK Federation. It's essentially exactly the same as InCommon, and that could just be another application that we federate into. Probably that would be the sort of actual undergraduate use case 2 element, and we would just federate with that via SAML.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Cool. Thank you very much.